Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajigacharya Ashtatadasata Shishimad Divanga Shila Bhaktivedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Canto number 3, Chapter 10, text number 27. Chapter entitled Divisions of the Creation. Vaikritas traya evaite, Vaikritas traya evaite, Deva sargascha sattama, Deva sargascha sattama, Vaikarikastu ya prokta, Vaikarikastu ya prokta, Kumarastu bhyatma, Kaumarastu bhayatmaka, Kaumarastu bhayatmaka, Vaikritastaya evaite, Deva sargascha sattama, Vaikarikastu ya prokta, Kaumarastu bhayatmaka. Vaikritastaya evate, Deva sargascha sattama, Vaikarikastu ya prokta, Kaumarastu bhyavatmaka. Vaikritastraya evaite, Deva sargascha sattama, Vaikarikastu ya prokta, Kaumarastu bhayatmaka. Word for word, Vaikrita, creations of Brahma, Traya, three kinds, Eva, certainly, Ete, all these, Deva Sargaha, appearance of the demigods, Cha, also, Sattama, O good Vidura, Vaikarikaha, creation of demigods by nature, Tu, but, Yaha, which, Prokta, described before, Kaumaraha, the four Kumaras, Tu, but, Ubhaya Atmakaha, both ways, namely Vaikrita and Prakrita. Translation by His Divine Grace Abhay Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So there's no purport to this verse. We'll continue reading until the end of the chapter. Translation to text 27. O good Vidura, these last three creations and the creation of the demigods, the 10th creation, are Vaikrita creations, which are different from the previously described Prakrita, natural creations. The appearance of the Kumaras is both. Text 28 to 29. Deva sargas chastavido vibudha pitaro sura gandharvapsaras siddha yaksha rakshamsi charana bhuta preta pisachascha vidyadhra kinnaradhaya dasaite vidurakyatha sargaste vishvashrikritaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Chandravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The creation of the demigods is of 8 varieties. 1. The demigods. 2. The forefathers. 3. The asuras or demons. 4. The Gandharvas and Apsaras or angels. 5. The yakshas and rakshasas. 6. The siddhas, charanas and vidyadharas. 7. The bhutas, prechas and pisachas. And 8. The superhuman beings, celestial singers, etc. All are created by Brahma, the creator of the universe. Purport, as explained in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the siddhas are inhabitants of Siddhaloka, where the residents travel in space without vehicles. At their mere will, they can pass from one planet to another without difficulty. Therefore, in the upper planets, their inhabitants are far superior to the inhabitants of this planet in all matters of art, culture, and science. Since they possess brains superior to those of human beings, the spirits and jinn mentioned in this connection are also counted among the demigods because they are able to perform uncommon functions, not possible for men. We'll finish this chapter. Text 30. Ataparam pravikshami vamsan manvantarini cha evam raja pluto shashta kalpa dishvatma bhur harihi shajati atma Shajatyamoga kankalpa atmaivatmanam atmanaha. Translation. Now I shall describe the descendants of Manu, the creator Brahma, as the incarnation of the passion mode of the personality of Godhead, creates universal affairs with unfailing desires in every millennium by the force of the Lord's energy. Purport. The cosmic manifestation is the expansion of one of the many energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Creator and the created are both emanations of the same Supreme Truth. As stated in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Janmadi yasya yataha. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the 3rd canto, 10th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Divisions of the Creation. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Gumgarati Vachalam Bhangam Yat Kripatamaham Mande Shri Gurudin Tharanam Paramanandmadam Shri Chaitaneshwaram. Hare Krishna. Thank you for attending this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we are coming to the end of a summary study of what Lord Brahma created. So the way it works is that from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, emanates all the energies. So Krishna is the absolute truth, the summum bonum, from which all energies emanate. But here's the thing about Krishna. Although energies emanate from him, he remains complete whole. So in the Ishopanishad it mentions that it's mentioned that Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. And this Upanishad mentions that from Krishna comes, who is the complete whole, come many complete units. But although these complete units emanate from the complete whole remains complete. He doesn't deteriorate or deplete in any way. So that is the nature of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So from him come many energies. And they are categorized in 3 major energies. That is, he has the external energy, which is the material nature, which is temporary. He has, it's eternal, but it's temporary in its manifestation. It comes and goes. Just like, we know the sun appears before us and then disappears at night and appears before us again. But we still don't say the sun doesn't exist. The sun exists but doesn't appear before us at a certain period of time. So we call its appearance as temporary. So in the same way, material nature appears and disappears, but always remains. Then we have 2 eternal energies. One is known as the marginal energy, and the other is known as the spiritual or internal energy of the Lord. And this marginal energy is what we are composed of, the spirit soul. And we are known as marginal energy because marginal means we're on the margin. There's the spiritual energy and there's the material energy. And being on the margin, we have the opportunity to choose either the material or the spiritual. That's why we're known as the marginal potency of the Lord. But here's the thing, although we are the energy of the Lord, we are not equal to the Lord. And we always remain individual. Okay? So, that being said, the Lord creates the material universe not simply for His own desire, but of course it's His desire, but it's in reciprocation to the rebellious living entities who desire to enjoy separately from Him. So yesterday, Prahlad Prabhu was giving the example of the rich man and how he has a son. But the rich man controls the whole household because he's the one making the money. So the young son prefers to remain free, wants to be free from such restrictions and also be the controller. So the father tells the son that in this household it's not possible. So therefore the son leaves, and so the father has to arrange a situation so that the son is maintained, is taken care of, but at the same time his desires are fulfilled. In the hope that the son will let go of his desires and come back home. So in the same way the Lord creates this material universe for the individual living entities who desire to enjoy separately from Him. Who get this idea for a moment that what would it be like to be like Krishna? That momentary desire is what causes a fall down. In other words, Prabhupada says, the reason why we're here in the material universe is because we envy Krishna. We think that we also should obtain that position. That if Krishna is able to enjoy unlimitedly, we should also be able to enjoy unlimitedly. If He's the proprietor, then actually I'm the proprietor. I'm also the proprietor. So in this way we have a little bit of a competition with Krishna. But this competition with Krishna is what's causing us the greatest anxiety. Because actually our constitutional position, just like water is meant to be liquid, just like sugar is meant to be sweet, and salt is meant to be salty, in the same way the living entity, the spirit soul, is meant to be servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada gives a very nice logical reasoning behind that. If you have a look at all relationships we have in this material world, we are always in the servant position. Whether we go to a job, when we go for a job, we are servant to the boss because we want money. When we have a relationship with someone, our partner, we must compromise so that we must serve their senses, right? We must compromise. If we become a parent, we have to compromise. We have to let go of our desires and we have to serve the desires of our dependents. In other words, if the child is sick, then you must go to the hospital. If the child has to go to school, you're going to have to arrange the fees. So in that way you're dependent, you're serving the child or the dependent in that way. And when one doesn't want to have any relationships in that way, a person may take up a cat or a dog. But as you can see, when people walk their cats, or rather walk their dogs, it's funny, once I was doing book distribution, I saw someone walking their cat with a leash. Anyway, I found that really funny. When they walk their dogs on the street, then the dog will pass stool, they have to pick up the stool. And they have to throw it away. So they're serving their dog. So who's really the master and who's the servant? So, anyway, that's a different discussion. So the point is here, we're a servant. And even if one doesn't want to be servant to anyone external, unfortunately we're servant to our mind and senses. Because if you have a look every single day, we are always being bombarded with desires within the mind, within the heart. And our senses are demanding so much. It's mentioned that the senses that are uncontrolled are like snakes with poisonous fangs. And they continuously bite us, causing us to go into more and more misery. Because these senses, they immediately come in contact with the sense objects and the mind starts churning. The plan-making factoring starts churning. If you do this, you'll get that. If you do this, you'll get that. If you act in this way, you'll get that. And in this way, we become entangled in material existence, not knowing how to get out. So, even if one doesn't take shelter of anything outside, eventually one will have to take shelter or serve the mind and the senses. You feel hungry, you have to eat. There, you're serving your body. So by nature the soul is servant. But unfortunately, due to illusion, we are considering ourselves the master. So therefore the Lord creates this material universe to rectify that problem. So many people will ask that then this material world seems to be a defect. That everything comes from the Supreme Lord, it means it's complete. So therefore in this material world everyone should enjoy completely. Everyone should have full satisfaction. No, actually the flaw is a feature. The whole creation of material existence is meant for us to give up the desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. And therefore it's perfect and complete because it carries out that function. We can't just say something, function of a particular item or object is whatever we like. There's a function for it. You know, I can't expect this lectern to start projecting my voice like the mic. It's not its function. And it's performing its function or its duty or its dharma properly by holding the book. And the mic is performing its function of recording and then not amplifying, but sending the signal to the amplifier. So that's the function of every object. The function of the living entity is servant. The function of the material existence is to help us give up this competition, this envy of Krishna, and take shelter of him again. And the best way to do that, unfortunately, is that we need to learn through the school of hard knocks. Distress, anxiety, all of these difficulties in life make us think. It makes us try to understand, what am I doing? Why am I here? On the other hand, so-called material happiness is somewhat elating. It causes elatedness. It causes some sort of euphoria, intoxication. And one forgets one's position. One forgets one's own, one's position, one's identity. And in that situation, one falls into illusion even more and more. In fact, this so-called happiness is the greatest enemy of the sense enjoyer. Because then one thinks that if I continue to act in this way, I'll be able to enjoy further and further. But material existence doesn't work that way. So he creates material existence. Long story short, he creates the resources, or he produces the resources. He's known as the ingredient cause, and he's also known as the effective cause, or the efficient cause. In other words, Krishna is the cause of all causes. From him comes the resources, and from him comes the impetus for the resources to combine, to produce different things, and to be enjoyed, of course. But the living entities are also known as the efficient cause. The material nature is also known as the ingredient cause. But we need to understand that everything emanates from Krishna, so he's the cause of all causes, sarva karana karanam. So from Krishna comes Brahma, comes all the universes, and within all of these universes comes Brahma. And Brahma is known as the secondary creator, or the engineer of the universe. An engineer simply deals with the resources available. They don't produce anything. Krishna produces, and Brahma uses whatever Krishna has produced to create different bodily forms, different situations, environments in this universe for living entities to enjoy. Because what happens is that before the living entities get injected into the material world, each one of them has their own particular desire. They want to enjoy in a particular way. Someone wants to enjoy in a body of a dog. Somebody wants to enjoy in a particular human body, but in a particular way. And so therefore all of these universal creation is created in such a way to satisfy those desires, or try to satisfy those desires. So here in this section of the chapter, we have read about how Brahma started creating all the different species of life, and he started creating the positions in which they could live in. So here we've been reading about the different creations of the Lord. So there are 9 creations given here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So 9 categories of creation that Lord Brahma has created. We'll go through these ones. Okay, so for Maitreya is explaining. So this is we'll go take a step back. This Srimad Bhagavatam is a conversation between 2 great sages, or the sages of Sutta Goswami and in Naimisharanya, and Sonaka Rishi and the other rishis of Naimisharanya. They quote another verse, another conversation. Sukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. And then Sukadev Goswami, the teacher, then quotes another conversation, which is by Maitreya and Vidura. So it's a nested conversation we're going through. So now Maitreya, the Muni or the sage, is explaining to his disciple Vidura, there are 9 different types of creation. And this is the great thing about Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam gives you the details. Because unfortunately, when you have a look at modern religion, or religion expounded by people this day and age, it is not complete. It doesn't completely satisfy the self. Because it doesn't give the full details of creation. It doesn't give the full details of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It gives a general understanding that God is great. But how great? From God, God created this material universe. But how did He do it? What happened? What were the steps? Okay, if we can't understand that, so what is creation? How to understand the nature of creation to the best of our ability? Srimad Bhagavatam gives you all that. And therefore it's a superior text because it's non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of course, but mainly because it gives you that impetus to take shelter of Krishna. Because then you understand how great Krishna is. So there are 9 different types of creation. The first creation is of the sum total ingredients of the material universe. This is where the modes interact. In the second, false ego is generated. In the third, the sense perceptions. The fourth, the creation of knowledge and working capacity is created. These are all known as the Prakrita creations. So we talked about Vaikrita and Prakrita today, so it's a bit technical. Let's try and understand a bit of it, as much to our best of our capability. So today's verse, Maitreya is telling Vidura that, O Vidura, these last 3 creations and the creation of the demigods are Vaikrita creations. They are different from the previously described Prakrita creations. So what are the Prakrita creations? Maitreya is mentioning in text 18 that the above creations, what were the above creations? There it's mentioned that the first 5. The first one is the Mahatattva, the second one is the false ego, third one, sense perceptions, fourth, the knowledge and working capacity, fifth, the controlling deities. Okay, part of that. Fifth are the demigods, or those in the mode of goodness, the controlling deities. There's going to be something, it sounds already conflicting, but let's hold on to that. So the fifth are the demigods. The sixth are the ignorant darkness of the living entities. So the tamasa, or the ignorance of the living entities. And this is what Maitreya is calling the natural creations. From the energy of the Lord, that's Prakrita creation. That comes directly from Krishna. They're the ingredients that Brahma uses, or he takes help of, to further create, to further engineer the universe. So then, whatever Krishna has produced, before Brahma starts doing his work, is called as Prakrita. And what Brahma then does after that, it's mentioned that the 7th creation that Brahma does is the 6 kinds of plants, which are those with fruit trees with flowers, trees and plants that exist until the fruit is ripe. In other words, after the fruit is ripe and it's taken, the plant dies. Creepers, pipe plants, creepers which have no support, and trees with flowers and fruits. Then the 8th creation, the lower species of life, and there are 28 in number. So I won't go through them now, but that's text 22 all the way to text 25. 25. And these are all the other living entities other than human beings. So you're dealing all the way from plants, aquatics, reptiles, all of them. And then you have the beasts and birds. But the creation of the human beings are the 9th creation of Lord Brahma. And as Prahlad Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, 400,000 different types of human beings, or of consciousness of human beings. Now, text 29, it's mentioned the 10th creation are the demigods, which are known as the Vaikrita creations. Yeah, the Vaikrita creations, which is quite interesting because we've already read the fifth creation being the demigods already. So if you go back a couple of chapters, you'll understand that when Krishna created the universe, along with creating the universe, he created the senses, the sense objects. From him came the deities controlling the senses and sense objects, and all of that came into the mind, the intelligence, the false ego. All of these started coming into existence by the Lord's entering into the universe and the production of the Virat Rupa. Okay? And then after that, Lord Brahma comes out of the lotus. So how to understand this? These demigods that are mentioned previously, they're known as the elemental demigods. They control the sum of all of those particular things they deal with. They deal with, say for example, the demigods of the different senses. They exist before creation, or they exist before the creation of the universe to assist the Lord. And then when the universe is engineered by the Lord, or created by Brahma, engineered by Brahma, then again those demigods appear as the Vaikrita Creations. You can understand them as expansions or other living entities who are empowered by the elemental demigods to take those positions. So these ones are known as the demigods, the forefathers, the asuras, the Gandharvas, so on and so forth. So for example, Surya, Indra, Chandra, or the demigod presiding over the moon, the sun. You have demigod presiding over the mind, which is the moon. And then you have various others over the senses. They're all getting their potency to be able to perform their duties from the original elemental demigods, or from the Supreme Lord himself as well. So that's them. But there's other types of demigods. There are other types of living entities, which is quite interesting, because it's already mentioned that the 9th is the human species. But the 10th talks about other human species, according to Padma Purana. The other human species are the demigods, the Pitirs or the forefathers, the Asuras, the Gandharvas, Yakshas, Vidyadharas, Bhutas, Pisachas. So they seem to be of already... So what was mentioned yesterday as the 9th creation of the human race is not the complete 400,000. Because the rest of them are explained here in the next 10th creation. So we're dealing with the lower ones. The lower human beings which were created in the 9th creation, they're us dealing on the Bhumandala or the Martya Loka, us dealing here. Whereas if you go a bit higher than us, then you're dealing with other types of living entities with higher consciousness. And they're known as the demigods, or those living entities who have been empowered by the Supreme Lord to control material nature or regulate nature. In other words, one will be in charge of a particular function of material nature, just to make sure everything's regulated and goes in its due course. Then you have the forefathers, straightforward. The asuras or demons, they're also human beings, but they have a consciousness that's averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even sometimes these asuras will be much more advanced in consciousness than us on this planetary system. They'll have much higher consciousness, but they'll misuse that for their own enjoyment and not for serving Krishna. The Gandharvas, Apsaras or angels. So the Gandharvas are singers, Apsaras are angels. They're also considered to be higher than us, but they're lower than the demigods. They're not quite on the platform of the demigods. Then you have the Yakshas and the Rakshasas. Rakshasas are known as cannibals or man-eaters. Again, another form of human species. They're a bit higher than us in consciousness, but they're geared towards cannibalism. The Siddhas, Charanas and Vidyadharas. Siddhas are known as, Siddha in Sanskrit means perfect, or living entities who have perfected their yoga, that they're able to use different potencies or different mystic arts. They're able to fly in the sky, they're able to become smaller than the smallest, bigger than the biggest. They can sit in one place and whatever they desire, they can reach out and grab it. So different things like that. There are 8 in total. Then you have the Charanas and the Vidyadharas. They're also lower than demigods. You have Buddhas, Bhuta, Preta and Pisachas. The Pretas are ghosts. The Pisachas are hobgoblins, and Bhutas are also considered a type of ghost as well. Then you have the superhuman beings, which is quite interesting. They're known as Kinnara. Kinnara. Celestial singers, etc. So you have living entities that are not quite of our lower caliber, they're just a bit higher than us. So they're known as Kinnaras, Kimpurushas. They're living entities that are somewhat have an animal features to them. So like for example, although Hanuman is considered to be a great devotee of the Lord, and he's a pure devotee, still he appears in a Kimpurusha form, or a form of a Vanar or of a monkey. But they still have human traits. Jatayu, if you have a look at all of those living entities in that nature, they'll be of that description. And these are all created by Brahma. In this today's verse, text 29, Prabhupada's talking a bit about the Siddhas. And so Prabhupada decides to talk a bit more about the mystic living entities who are able to travel the universe. Because we are trying to travel the universe by mechanical means. But Prabhupada gives you a very interesting analysis that there are mystic potencies that allow you to do different things. One of them is becoming smaller than the smallest. Another is to become bigger than the biggest. Another one is to become lighter than the lightest. And so on and so forth. You'll have one that you can obtain whatever you like. There's another one where whatever you can control another living entity. So like this, there are 8 in number. And Prabhupada explains very carefully that each of these can be somewhat manipulated or somewhat manifested or produced by the scientists in this day and age. Like for example, if you want to enter a mountain and it's a very small hole to enter, Prabhupada says they've created dynamite so that you can break and enter. In the same way, you want to become lighter than the lightest, you enter an aeroplane and start traveling in the sky. So Prabhupada is saying that by brute force, the scientists have been able to do it somehow or other. So what value are these mystic potencies? This is another example Prabhupada he has given. It's a small story a story that Prabhupada gives of a particular village where one particular person decides to leave the village, desiring to go and do yoga practice to develop potency or energies or the mystic arts, yoga siddhis. And it's mentioned that he goes and finds a teacher, practices it for 10 years, and he comes back to the village again. And then all the villagers see him there. And then he appears in front of their lake, and he brings them there, and he starts walking on water. He starts walking on the water and shows his magical feats. And all the villagers are surprised, except for one old man. And this wise old man, then he tells this boy, "What's so special about this? You wasted 10 years to learn this. I just give a couple of coins to the boatman and I can also go across the water. So what is the value of this?" So in the same way, Prabhupada is explaining that what is the value of performing yoga for such cheap benefits? Better you go for something that you cannot obtain, no matter how much you try in this life, with how many material means. And that is pure love of God. If you're able to obtain that, you'll always be happy in life. And that is the purpose of yoga. That is the purpose of performing any activity for the pleasure of Krishna, so that we can develop our love for Krishna. Because being servant of someone means there's a relationship. There's a relationship. And it's up to you how intimate you want that relationship to be. If there's a master and servant relationship, the intimacy is not so great because money is in the way. The servant is a servant of the master so long as the master pays the servant. And if you go deeper and deeper into relationships, you people get into family life because there's a relationship there. What holds two people together is a sense of intimacy or a shared sort of responsibility in a relationship, right? So they'll willingly sacrifice their own pleasure to please the other. So in that way, the more and more intimate you go, the more and more you find someone becomes selfless. They love the person so much that they're willing to even let go of their own happiness to be able to serve them. So that is pure love of God. That love can only happen between the individual living entity and Krishna. Because Krishna is the object of all living entities' love. And Krishna is able to reciprocate with everything we do in relationship with Him. There is no deficiency in Krishna's interactions with us. So, what is the point of all these mystic cities if you can obtain such enjoyment? Here's another interesting story Prabhupada gives, or an example, that once a king of a village, he happens to get lost in a forest while performing his hunting work. And there a particular forest dweller, a person living in the forest, happens to find him and save him. And the king becomes obliged to him and tells this person living in the forest with his family that, I'm completely obliged to you. Whatever you want, please let me know. I'm willing to immediately grant it to you because I am the king of this country. And so this person thought, I don't want anything now, just wait, I'll come and find you. And so this living entity, or the one living in the forest, then finds the king. And the king asks him, so what do you want? What is it that you'd like from me? And so he tells the king that we would like to invite you for lunch. And so the king, what, do you want to invite me to lunch? You could take my kingdom. You can take my position. You can take my treasury. You want to invite me to lunch? But he understood that this person was very intelligent, because the king doesn't go to any ordinary place to take lunch. He needs to redevelop that person's place of residence so it's fit for him to go and enjoy lunch. So in other words, a palace equivalent to that of his own. Another example Prabhupada gives is that when a master has many cooks as his servant, but because he desires, because he's rich, he desires so many nice foodstuffs. I want this sweet, I want that savory, I want this curry, I want this, I want that. He asks a massive list of things. And they'll produce it, the servants, the cooks. They'll produce all the foodstuffs and present it before the master. But because the master's in anxiety of making money, to making sure that everyone is maintained, the anxiety of maintaining his position, his constant worries of people trying to take his money, all of these anxieties prevents him from eating to his best of his desire. So he'll eat a little and he'll go away. And guess who enjoys the rest? The servants. So who is the master and who's the servant here? Who is technically shortchanged, or in other words, who is benefiting from such a relationship more? In the material sense, the servants. The servants benefit more than the master. Not only are they maintained, they get to eat what the master eats, they get to live in the house the master lives in, and they sometimes even get to dress themselves in the clothes the master has. They get the same facilities as the master. So that's a more empowering position than being the master, because the master is not able to enjoy such situations, because his mind is not allowing him to. It's a crude example, but can be applied to Krishna. Although Krishna fully enjoys at all periods of time, Krishna gives his servants, his unalloyed, loving servants, all facilities to enjoy, all potencies. Although the living entity or the servants don't want it, they get all of that satisfaction naturally. They don't have to worry a single thing. They just simply perform their function, their duty. All they have to do is reciprocate with the Lord's dealings, and that's it. Doesn't have to worry a single thing. Because the chief thing that we want in life is we want to be happy. We want ananda, bliss. We want to be loved. If that thing is satisfied, then everything else seems to be secondary. Everything else seems to fall into place. Because Krishna will manage and take care of that in the material form, in the material sphere. So here Prabhupada is giving, I'll continue here. In the upper planets, the inhabitants are far superior to the inhabitants of this planet in all matters of art, culture and science, since they possess brains superior to those of human beings. So then you may question, how come living entities like demons and cannibals and spirits and all those things, how can they be considered to be greater than us? Because in one sense, if you think about it, they're just completely controlled and dominated by their senses. Ghosts are stuck in the subtle form of life. They want to enjoy, but they can't enjoy. They want to drink, but they don't have the body to drink, for example. What to speak of the other sort of demoniac living entities like the Rakshasas who are cannibals. They're not able to eat anything else except flesh like that. So then, how are they considered to be greater than us? Because although we say consciousness also indicates a sense of art, culture and science. A civilized nature. How can all these uncivilized entities be greater than us? Prabhupada explains they are able to perform uncommon functions not possible by us. That's the reason why. That's the qualifying factor. And so in the next verse, Prabhupada is explaining the cosmic manifestation is expansion of one of the many energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Creator and the Created are both emanations of the same Supreme Truth, as stated in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Janmadi Yasyataha. So Prabhupada is wrapping up this chapter by saying that both Brahma and what he creates all come from Krishna. He is the source, Janmadi Yasyataha, the summum bonum, or the complete whole from which everything emanates from. So now, having finished describing in summary the creation of the material universe, now Maitreya is going to explain to Vidura the descendants of Manus, or those who are maintaining Dharma. So in every single age, there is a particular maintainer of Dharma. He maintains the order and the functions of the living entities, specifically the human beings. And so from next chapter onwards, we'll start talking about the calculation of time from the atom. So very interesting chapter. You'll see how even before science talks about atomic particles and things like that, how the Vedic culture has already started way, way before modern science gave nomenclature and so-called discovered it. So we'll start talking about that from tomorrow onwards. Okay, so I'll end here. Thank you very much for listening. If there are any comments or questions? Yes?
Two questions. The one question is, mystified about something, is where did Krishna come from?
Good question. Well, it's mentioned...
He didn't just, Big Bang Theory about living.
Yeah, so... I'll answer you and then I'll explain the answer. So that question was asked to Prabhupada. Where does Krishna, everything comes from Krishna, where does Krishna come from? Krishna comes from Krishna. And how to understand this is that the way we work in material existence is that we're conditioned by time. We're conditioned to think this, then this, then this, then this. That's the way time works, right? But in the spiritual realm, before time, it's very hard for us to conceive. It is not that, this happened, then Krishna existed. Krishna always exists. That's what's called as eternal. There's no beginning, middle or end. It always exists. That's eternal. So therefore, from Krishna comes Krishna. And so then you can argue actually, in the same sort of line of thought, if the living entities are eternal, how come they are created, so-called created? But actually they're not created. They always exist with Krishna. The energies always exist with the energetic. They're never, it's not that Krishna decides, I kind of feel bored, let me produce living entities. They always exist with Krishna. They always exist. That's the crucial point to understand. In this material world, our understanding is time works in a linear fashion. This has to happen, this has to... Rather, it's also cyclic. It happens like this, it happens like this, happens like this, but it always goes back to the beginning and starts acting like that. So you have the 4 ages, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Silver Age, the Gold Age, they continue going as a cyclic sort of fashion. But beyond time, it's very hard for us to conceive of. Like, for example, we know time is continuing when we see the sun rise and set. It's a good indication that time is moving on, right? But in the spiritual world, the rising and setting of the sun doesn't affect the living entities there. It's just simply a prop that's used to engage in a nice relationship with Krishna. So sometimes the sun will be up and they'll perform pastimes, like they'll take lunch, right? And sometimes the sun will set and they'll just perform nighttime pastimes. But they're not affected by it. It's not like, here in the material universe, when sun rises and set, it means our time duration is going to end. At this particular time, we have to do this, we have to do that. No, in the spiritual world, it can change. The sun is in the meridian, it can immediately change to being nighttime. It doesn't function in the way we perceive of in the material world. It's just a prop. Just like sometimes in plays, you just chuck a prop in the middle of the play, and the next scene they just take it away. Although it may seem not so logical. So in the same way, in the spiritual world, time is just a prop used used to enjoy. And that makes sense. So from Krishna comes Krishna. What was your second question?
I've asked this on numerous occasions, but I get a different answer. What is the definition of Maya? M-A-Y-A. That word Maya. It's in my head. But when I look at the documentation, I can't work it out.
Yeah.
I can't seem to work it out.
Yep.
Is it talking about the material world or...
Okay, good question. So, when we say Maya, if you want to go to the etymological meaning, Prabhupada explains that it's made of two words, Ma and Ya, which means not this. Not this. Yeah. Ma, Ya. Ma means not and Ya means this. Not this. That is the, you could say...
Is it talking about the material world or material...
Yes, because Maya, a synonym to not this, it means illusion. And it describes the material world, which is an illusion. What is the illusionary nature of the material world? The illusionary aspect of the material world is that we think it's permanent and will give us happiness. But kind of like a deer running in the desert, trying to go for water, but sees an oasis, but actually it's just simply a mirage. That's the illusion. The illusion of material nature is that we think we'll get happiness from this place. Right? So it's describing material nature. It is not that it's a descriptor. I'll end with that. It describes material nature. What is material nature? Material nature is illusion. It is Maya. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll end here. Thank you very much for listening. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo.